Hello and welcome to the Two Ace Podcast, the podcast designed to help you manifest your Two Ace mindset. My name is Josh Brooks and my one focus is success through the art of discipline and flow. I hope you enjoy the episode. Now let's get right into it. So hey guys, we are joined with Liam Naden here. He is the host of the Letting Yourself Off the Hook podcast and I am delighted for him to join me today. So Liam, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you, Josh. Thanks a lot for having me here.
No worries. So one of the notes that I've got on your podcast, and it's the main sort of title, is that you let your natural energy sort of flow through you and let that guide you. And like you just said before we hit record, you don't make plans. You just focus on now, focus on the next step. I'd like to just delve into that a little bit.
Well, I guess where it came from was I've spent most of my life, or I had spent a lot of my life, struggling to be successful. And I was always setting goals and going to seminars, going to workshops, learning as much as I could, and really trying as hard as I could to keep getting more, because I wanted to be rich. I wanted to be, have freedom. I didn't want to just have an ordinary life. I wanted to see what was out there, have a life of adventure. And that served me pretty well in some ways, because I did become wealthy. I became a millionaire, and
Nice.
I had multiple businesses, and I was doing lots of great things. But I'm a bit older than you, so I can tell you that when I was in my mid-40s, something changed. And that was, I remember there was a specific day very clearly where I was just putting the finishing touches on my dream home that I was building. And I remember part of that was I even had a music room. I'd been a musician earlier in life, and I always wanted my own music room. So I remember on one particular day going into the music room on my own, and it was a stunning day, and the sun was shining through the big windows that we had, and I had this magnificent view to the mountains. And I remember thinking, I've done it. I've made it. I've reached all of my dreams. I'm living my dream. Everything that I thought I wanted. This incredible house that I got to design, with my own music room. I had multiple businesses. I had money. I had a family. I was married. And I thought, this is what success is. I've done it. I've achieved my goals. But then I remember thinking, well, if I've achieved my goals, why aren't I happy? Because instead of actually being happy, instead of being really satisfied with everything I had on my goals lists, everything I'd worked for decades for, instead of feeling really grateful, I felt absolutely terrible, absolute rock bottom. It was like the life force was being drained out of me. I had so much stress in my life. I had so many problems to deal with. So on the one hand, I had good things happening and all these amazing things I'd created, but I couldn't really enjoy it because I still had lots of problems. And I remember thinking, I'm almost at breaking point here, because if this is really all there is, if I've spent all this time to create this and it's everything I thought I wanted, but I'm still miserable, then maybe I'm going down the wrong track. Maybe it would be better if I just got rid of everything, threw it all away, started again, because I think I'm somehow going down the wrong track. And I actually feel like I would rather lose everything I have than lose my soul, because that's what it felt like. It felt like my energy was being drained. And as they say, I'm sure you know this one, you have to be careful what you think about. You have to be careful what you wish for, because it was literally in just a few weeks that I did lose everything. I lost my businesses. I lost the house and the music room. I lost my marriage. I lost everything. And I ended up having to move out of this magnificent house and move back in with my elderly mother, who lived in a long way away from where I was. But I had to sleep on the sofa in the living room of her small apartment. And I had nothing other than the clothes on my back, literally. And it was really strange because, this thing about, people say, I lose everything and, become homeless. But I never really realized what that would feel like, what it would mean, because it wasn't just losing my stuff. It was losing hope. It was losing any sense of yourself or of any awareness of what was going on, because I was totally confused as to why this had happened. And I was confused for two reasons, or there were two questions that kept coming up in my mind. One was, why has this happened to me? Because I was the student of success. I was a bit like probably your listeners and maybe yourself, that you're always looking for new ideas on how to be more successful. You want to achieve success. So you read books, you go to seminars. I used to go to all the seminars, read all the books. I had a huge library of personal development and spirituality. And I didn't just read the books. I didn't just go to the seminars. I really tried everything they taught me to do or said you should do to achieve success. So I had all my goals lists. I had my affirmations. I had my, working on my subconscious mind, changing my beliefs, all of these things. I had all of this. But I thought, why has this happened to me? Because none of this was on my goals list. None of this was in any way related to everything I'd learned about how to be in control of your life. I've done all that stuff, and yet here I am with nothing. It's like it was a complete waste of time. And the second thing I was totally confused over and kept asking myself is, so what do I do now? I have no clue on what to do. I have no opportunity. I don't know what to do. So I was in this state not only of almost depression, but confusion as to why it had happened. What do I do? And I did something. I was really, really fortunate. They say, the worst of times being the best experiences. I was really fortunate because what it forced me to do was to do something that in any other situation I don't think I ever would have done. And that was, I just completely gave up. And I said, that's it. I'm not going to try anymore. I'm not going to try and figure this out. I'm not going to try and work out what to do. I'm not going to go out and look for any opportunities. I've had enough. Whatever happens is going to happen. It can't get any worse, but I really don't care anymore. I have no energy left, and everything I've tried, I don't know what to do. So that's it. Well, the strange thing was, what I didn't realize at the time was that was the shift. That was the turning point. And I didn't realize there's actually a biological reason why it turned out to be the start of much greater success in my life. Because after that, everything started to turn around. And I attracted a new relationship, a far better one than I'd ever had before. And then a business showed up. And then another business showed up. Then I was doing all these things. I bought a new motorhome and travelled around New Zealand for 18 months running my businesses. Then we moved to Europe and I bought a brand new yacht. We sailed all around Europe for 8 years. And, all of these things, they were just coming to me all of the time. And I thought, this is amazing because not only was it good stuff happening on the outside, but it's good stuff happening on the inside. Totally different feeling. And I remember being in a little bay in the Greek islands, I think it was actually, and we'd anchored for the night and woke up in the morning, it was a beautiful sunny day and we were the only boat there. You can imagine just falling off the back of the boat for a swim and you get out of the water and you've got two businesses that are just operating perfectly. No, you didn't wake up to any problems or any stress with them. They're just going really well and you're doing everything you want to do without any problems and stress. And, it's when I realized, you have this knowing sometimes that you're on the right track, that things are actually working. And it's a feeling I'd never had when I was in that struggle mode of stress and problems and all these things happening. So it was completely different. And I thought, why is it? Because the other problem was it really confused me. Because then I thought, why is it that I tried so hard? I did everything I could to figure out how to be more successful. I had all my goals lists. I set goals. I worked hard to achieve things. Why is it that when I took that approach, I had a ton of problems, a ton of stress. I never felt really successful. And then everything collapsed. And now here I am. I'm not setting any goals. I'm not going after anything. Things are coming to me. And yet my life is working absolutely brilliantly, giving me far more deep inner fulfillment than I ever had before without any stress and problems. And that's when I decided I have to figure out what's going on. What am I doing differently? Because it was something very different to all of these things I'd learned about success. As I said, I wasn't doing the goal setting, the affirmations, the working on your subconscious, the struggling to achieve and overcome obstacles. I wasn't doing any of that. So I wanted to figure out what I was doing differently. And that really led me down a completely new path as to how we really get the results in our life, good and bad. How do we create problems? How do we create success? And it's something completely different to what most people or think of as the way we get them, which is why most people are struggling. So that's what I do now, is really share what I learned, not only from my own experience, but from all of the science, the philosophy, the psychology. Everything comes together to explain how we really get the results we do in our life, not what we think we do. And that's what I share with other people now. And that's why I'm talking to you, I guess.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, so thanks for that. So it's sort of, you believe in the power of attraction and the law of attraction, that you sort of, if you no,
No, it's nothing to do with the law of attraction. That, unfortunately, is another thing we've been taught, that I tried, and most of the people I know who I've worked with who've tried it, they agree it doesn't. If you're really honest, these things, they might give you a little bit of incremental um, success or help, but they're not the answer. And there's a fundamental reason why they're not the answer, because they're not biological. And we can talk about that if you like.
yeah, go ahead. Yeah, that'd be awesome.
We see the missing link that I discovered as to how we become successful and how we get the results we do. It's all to do with nature. Because when you think about it, it's really strange that we're all busy trying to make our life work in a certain way, yet no matter what we do, no matter how hard we try, pray, meditate, convince ourselves of something different, we are governed by the laws of nature. You can convince yourself walking off a 10-story building that you're going to go up in the air, but no matter what you do, no matter what mind trick you use, no matter how much you practice the law of attraction, you're still going to go down. It's the law
Yeah,
of nature. I mean, try and stop breathing, try and stop your heart beating. We can't do it. So nature rules everything, irrespective of what we want or think we want or what we expect. But here's the other thing: because of that, nature has rules. And I mentioned that one, the law of gravity. That's obviously a rule. You can't break that law of nature. It's going to get you every time. And it turns out there are actually three rules or three laws that govern natural success. And the first law of nature, or should I say, they are to do with success and to do with us and our success. The first law of nature is the law of thriving. And if you
Lord,
ask any biological scientist, what's the purpose of living things, of life? Why does life exist? How is life designed? What is life here to do? How is it wired, if you like? Every biological scientist will tell you that the primary overriding purpose of all life is to survive. Just like gravity rules, the rule of survival rules as well. Whatever else is going on, you are there and everything is there wired to survive. But what gives something the best chance of surviving is when it's its best. Because the better it is obviously the greater chance it has to survive. And science actually has a word for this, and it's called homeostasis. Homeostasis is the biological description of an organism functioning optimally. And so that means all the organs, all of the process in this organism are functioning at the best that they can be to give it the greatest chance for survival. And it turns out that all of nature operates in homeostasis. All of the studies, even going back as far as what's his name, Darwin, he all of these people are fascinated. There's a whole school of thought or school of research called biomimicry, which is about looking at nature. And the conclusion that all these people who really look closely at nature, the conclusion they come to, it is absolutely perfect. There is this harmony that exists where everything is being the best that it can be, in the right place, at the right time, doing what it's supposed to do to keep this mechanism, or this environment, if you like, going along. Occasionally there's a problem. Some animals might die of starvation because there's not enough food, or a tree might die because it's planted in the wrong spot. But overwhelmingly, more than 98% of all living things are being their best. They are achieving this state of homeostasis. So for humans, we're also biological. So we're designed to achieve this. We have the same biological purpose, which is to thrive, be the best that we can be so that we have the greatest chance for survival. Because we have the same biology as the rest of nature, certainly of other animals. So why is it that we don't feel like we're thriving? Because for humans, we have an added dimension to thriving. It's not just about being as good as we can be physically. It's also about being as good as we can be mentally and emotionally. And we know this. We know that when you're feeling good, when you're more resourceful, you're more creative, you're more able to deal with situations. You can come with better ideas. So it turns out biologically, we are designed to achieve homeostasis, which means to be as good as we can be physically. And it also means to be happy. It means to be fulfilled. It means to be doing what we're supposed to be doing in our life and having everything in our life there that makes us feel great, that makes us feel excited, that's not bogged down with stress and problems. Because when you really think about that from a biological perspective, problems and stress can't be natural. They don't help you survive. You know, this idea, well, you get stronger from problems, that's not actually true. There are other ways, far better ways to learn than through problems. All problems do is shorten your life through the stress. So we have to ask the question, and I certainly did, well, if my purpose is to be biologically the best I can be, why aren't I? Why is the rest of nature? Because again, you ask most people, do you think you're the best that you can be? If I was to describe you as optimum functioning, would you say that's how you feel? Most people say the opposite. We're the opposite of the rest of nature. Everything in the rest of nature is successful, 98% successful. We're 98% unsuccessful. And it comes down to we have never been taught to understand how we operate biologically and how we achieve our individual state of being the best that we can be. And that is what we don't realize is that every living thing in nature has been provided with a mechanism, a machine, I call it, to ensure that that organism achieves and maintains homeostasis, that it maintains the best state it can be so it has the greatest chance for survival. And of course, that machine is a brain. And we think, yes, the brain, okay, the brain's designed to keep us alive. It's not designed to keep you alive. It's designed to make you thrive, be your best, so you have the longest life possible. That's your biological purpose, to survive as long as you possibly can. So when I started to research into the brain and how it works, what I found fascinating is that it really is a machine. That's its purpose. It's a bit like a motor car. If you would ask
Yeah.
somebody, what does a motor car do? Well, they say, well, it's obvious. It's just a machine and only does one thing. It gets you from where you are to where you want to go. That's it. And it's going to do that reliably, predictably. It's not going to take you somewhere else somewhere else out of it.
Yeah.
So, it's not going to be unpredictable. And it's going to give you an enjoyable experience if you drive it the right way, if you know
Yeah.
how to drive it. Now, if you drive it the wrong way, or if you don't know how to drive it, it's not going to get you to where you want to go, and it's not going to give you a pleasant experience. You're going to get frustrated, exhausted. Maybe you think the way to drive a car is to get out from behind and push, if no one had told you how to drive a car. Sounds ridiculous, doesn't it? But if you had no clue about how a car worked, you might think that was the way. It's got wheels, I'll push it. And what would happen then? You would put in a huge amount of effort and nothing would happen apart from you getting exhausted. And then perhaps you would say, the problem is me. I'm not determined enough. I'm not strong enough. I'm not motivated enough. I need to work on myself to be tougher to overcome this obstacle. But all you needed to know was somebody to come along and say, you're doing it the hard way, and it's never going to work that way. It's not the natural way. It's not the way it's designed. It's designed for you to get in, press the right levers and buttons, and do the right things at the right time, and let the machine do the work for you. That's all you
Yeah.
need to do is steer it and know which buttons to press and levers. It's
So,
exactly the same with the brain.
so with that in mind, what would you say the engine oil for the brain is?
It's not so much an engine oil, it's how does the mechanism work? Because again, I think we've got hung up on this idea that it's all about your thoughts. You have to put in the right thoughts. You have to visualize. You have to attract to you through your thoughts what you want. That's all completely wrong thinking, which is why most people never achieve goals. I don't know about yourself, but I often ask people when I start working with them or when they come to me to get this information, I say, what percentage of the goals that you set do you ever achieve?
I don't
It,
necessarily know. Sorry, was that an actual question or is that like a rhetorical?
it's a rhetorical question, if
Oh,
you like. Well, do you know the answer yourself? I'd be curious to know.
well, I'd say a majority of them. There are some that I sort of set with an optimistic outlook, and then I come like let's say you set a daily goal for the next day, um, thinking that you'll have all the time in the world that next day, but realistically you don't, so you miss out on that time period. Let's say so you can still achieve the majority of your goals, but sometimes
Okay.
it's not all of them.
I guess what the sort of goals I'm talking about are really life goals, like how much money you want to make, or what business you want to have, or what sort of relationship you want to have, what you want your health to be like, or where you want to live, or what a lot of people do, all of the experiences they want to have. They want to travel around the world on a yacht or whatever it is. But the reality is all those sort of goals, the sort of life purpose goals, the big goals, not the sort of daily to-do lists or, the smaller ones,
Yeah, yeah.
which are much more achievable. When I say to people, have you achieved 100% of the goals that you've ever set for yourself? People say, I want to earn this amount of income for this year, or I want to be worth this much, or I want my business to work this certain way. So when I ask them, what percentage, was it 100%? Can you say that all of your big goals that you've set, you've achieved? And they always shake their head. And I go down the numbers, 90%, 80%, 50%. And when people really think about it, you know what the average number is that I normally get to? And it's what I've seen other people describe as well, between
Go
2
on.
and 3%.
Oh, wow.
The reality is everybody's out there thinking, I'm achieving my goals, I'll achieve my goals. And we always end up disappointed because we don't get anything that we really want or that we
Hmm.
think that we want. And so we think the way to get there is to keep struggling, to keep trying to get there. And that's not natural either. So I
Yeah.
guess where I'm getting at is we need to take a completely different approach to how we get what we do in our life. And the first thing to realize is one of the things to realize, because remember, when I was sleeping on my mother's sofa, and if someone had said to me, or if I'd worked it out, I know what my goals are. My goal is to sail around the world on my own yacht with a wonderful person and manage two businesses. It's actually three businesses from anywhere in the world, just doing whatever I wanted to do. And then I'm going to be going on and understanding how the brain works, how success really works in a completely different way to the way most people are describing it, but in a way that is effective, that actually helps people. And I'm going to be helping people from all around the world and sharing information and getting on calls with people like Josh and his audience to discuss all this. Now, if I'd come up with that, or I don't know, God or somebody had come up with that, and I figured out that was my goal, what would have happened? Two things. One is, I would have thought the person telling me, or I would have looked at it and said, this is absolutely crazy, for two reasons. The first one is, I didn't think I could achieve it. It's like, I'm there on my mother's sofa, and it's like, you're going to go and sail around the world? What are you talking about? On your own yacht? Yeah, okay, you've done a bit of sailing, but, this is a different thing. If someone had told me that, I wouldn't have believed it. And the second thing, why I wouldn't have believed I could do it, the other thing is, I didn't even know that that's what I wanted. And that's the real thing about this whole law of attraction goal setting. The part of your brain that knows what you need to have to be the best that you can be, to be in this thriving state, this homeostasis, that part of your brain is not your thinking brain. Your thinking brain doesn't know what you want. You can never figure out what you want because that's using the wrong part of the brain, particularly if you're in the wrong brain state when you're trying to figure it out. We can talk about that. And that's why most people would be honest, if they're honest, I should say, would say that all of the significant things that happen to them in their life are not really things that they've planned for. It's like, I don't know if you're married or in a relationship, but most people, if they're listening, if they are, you want to ask yourself the question, how did you meet the person you ended up being married to? Was it on a goals list? Now, you might have had an idea you want to have somebody in your life, but did you sit down the day before you met them and write down, tomorrow on my goals list is to meet the person that I'm going to marry. This is what they're going to look like. I can visualize it. I can see them. The law of attraction will bring them to me at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. And these are all of the things we're going to do for the next 30 years or the rest of my life. I'm going to have children. It's not the way it happens. It's like
Yeah.
something else brings that to you. The same with business opportunities or even career opportunities. So this is why the whole concept of trying to figure this stuff out doesn't work. And as I say, when I stopped trying to figure it out, that's when everything started to work, because there's a different part of your brain that knows what you need and it will bring it to you at the right time if you allow it to do it. But you can't limit it, because once you do, you're stuck.
Is that not in itself, like, I'm just being devil's advocate here. Is that not in itself the law of attraction? How you're letting it come to you,
Well, the
so
law of
you're allowing it to.
the law of attraction, what I've studied is you decide what you want. You say, this is what I want,
I got you.
and
So it's more of like a
I'll
pursuit
allow it
rather
to
than.
come to me.
got you.
You get the
Yeah,
difference?
yeah, I understand. Yeah, I get you. Yeah, you mentioned being effective as well, and in one of the previous episodes I've listened to, it's called "Are you busy or effective?" And I really
Right.
like that. I really like that about that question. Um, and in that, you mentioned working smarter and harder rather than smarter or harder. And I also really I like that saying as well. And I've said that before myself. So when you said it, it sort of made me relate a lot. Um, So you say that you're on your mother's sofa and you're thinking. Well, you said you're not thinking about traveling the world in a yacht, but what were you thinking? You know, you'd lost your wealth. You'd come back to square one, as you say. And what were you then? Were you just then sort of like, well, life is life. Let's see how it goes. Or because surely if you did that, you would just, there's no action if you do that. Surely you do sort of, what was the initial step of, wait, I've lost everything. I'm on my sofa. Now what? I want to get it back. I want to be successful. Like what was that first step that made you actually get up and go kind of thing?
Well, I think it's a bit of a myth to say that if you don't take action, you won't get anywhere. Because again, it comes down to how the brain works. And if you listen to that episode, you know what I'm really talking about is the right action at the right time. And we have another word for the right action. It's inspired action, where we suddenly get this idea, I should do that. Or an opportunity comes along and we take it. And I'll give you an example. In that state, one of the first things that happened was I started to work in a shop in the back office doing some admin because I didn't have any money, and it was just for a few hours a week. It was just to get something. And I walked into the shop, out into the main part of the store one day, and there's a man standing there, and he turned around and he recognised me. He said, "Liam, how are you?" And I hadn't seen him in about 25 years. And he said, "What are you doing? What are you up to?" And I said, "Well, not very much." And he said, "Hey, there's an opportunity for a business that's come up just near where I have my business. You'd be absolutely perfect for that. Why don't you do that?" And I thought, my first thought was, well, it sounds good, but I don't have any money. So a few weeks later, that was my first business that I was running. And I don't know where all the money came from, but people came along, situations came along, people helped me, opportunities came along. So was I working hard? Not really. I was working hard, but I wasn't getting stressed. I was putting in effort and I wasn't overly pushing and trying to find things. And it comes down to how your brain works and how you really create results in your life. And maybe I could explain a little bit about that. We have these four parts to our brain. I've mentioned one already, which is the thinking brain, the one you're using when you're busy trying to figure stuff out. But your thinking brain is nothing more than a library or a database of all of the information you've picked up in your life. So it's only a tiny amount of the information that actually exists. It's just from your own experience, your own ideas, what you've read or seen, or whatever it is. But when you think about all the great achievements in life, and maybe in your own life, all the breakthroughs, they don't come from trying to figure stuff out. They come from things like your inspiration. You suddenly get this idea and you go, oh, you might have been working on a problem for a while and you couldn't figure it out and you're really stressed about it. And suddenly you get this idea, you're thinking about something else and suddenly this idea comes to you and it's the right answer. And you say, why didn't I think of that before? That's the answer. Or you see new opportunities, or you get inspired and you get motivated. You become creative. You come up with new ideas. Musicians, artists, a lot of creative people have talked about they hear the music and they write it down, or they just see all of a sudden see something and they paint it. They don't know where it comes from. It's not coming from trying to force it. It just comes. So all of these things, like your awareness and your intuition, we often have those gut feelings. We think, I don't know why, but I should do that, or I shouldn't do that. I don't know why I'm going to marry that person, but I think I am. I am going to marry that person. So where do all these things come from? They don't come from your thinking brain. They come from another part of your brain, which I call your creative brain. And I'm not talking here about some theoretical, subconscious mind or any of that sort of stuff. These are four separate biological regions in your brain that are all carrying out separate chemical functions. And your creative brain, which is described extensively in all religions, and science is increasingly starting to really study this and become aware of it, that it's separate from your thoughts, it's separate from what, all this thinking stuff. It's centered right in the very center of your brain, this particular region.
Mm.
And it's responsible for, as I say, your creativity, your imagination, your intuition, your motivation. This is the part of your brain that you're using when you're feeling what we call in the flow, in the zone. And what is that feeling? That is the feeling you are being the best that you can be. When things are going really well and everything's falling into place and you're coming up with great ideas and you're really productive and all of this good stuff is coming out of you, and things that appear like coincidences, they're everything you would call it, everything's just falling into place. That is homeostasis. That's when we're being the best that we can be. And that's when this part of the brain is actually in control. But the point is, this part of the brain is supposed to be in control all of the time, not just the odd flash of inspiration that we might get, or, gap between our problems. That's the part of the brain that's supposed to be in control. And when it is in control, it will not only solve all your problems, but it'll show you exactly the right thing to do in every moment. And it will lead you, as I say in my podcast, down the fastest and easiest path to you being the best that you can be. That's what it's biologically designed to do. That's what it does for every other living species. So that's the part we need to learn to activate. And the reason we don't activate it is we don't realize what stops it from activating. Because we have another part of our brain, which I call the survival brain, which is a very, very limited part of the brain. This part of the brain is it was designed as a weapon when our biology was developed millions of years ago, to evolve. We needed something to protect us from a threat in our environment. So maybe a lion was running from behind a rock, about to eat us. We needed to find a way to stop being in homeostasis, stop being creative and, feeling good. We needed to find a reaction, a way to fight off this danger. So your survival brain can only really do four things. It can, if you think about the lion thing, if you have to fight off a lion or any threat to your survival, you can only do one of four things. You can run away, you can stand and fight, you can shout for help, or you can do nothing and freeze. They're the only four things that this part of your brain is capable of doing. But the problem is, for most people, they're trying to manage their life in this brain state. And they're trying to figure out what they should do, what their goals should be, all of the great stuff, how to solve problems. And they can only act in one of four ways: run away, shout for help, stand and fight, or freeze. You can see the difference. That's what most people
Yeah.
are doing. They're the only things people are doing. If they've got a problem, what do? They shout at the other. You're having an argument with someone. What do? You react and shout back. That only makes it worse. Or you try and fight the problem. Or you run away from the problem and just say, well, I'm going to ignore it. Or you call out for help. You read books and go to counseling, or, you have a coach or something like that. Help me find out what to do. Or you get depressed and do nothing. They're the only four things you can do.
Mm.
And when you're doing that, when you're in that brain state, all of the resources you need for you to be the best that you can be, you don't have access to any of those. Probably haven't got time to talk about why biologically you're not designed to use all of those things, but you can think about it. They're of no use to you when a lion's about to eat you. You need to react and fight. You can't just be all, noticing the big picture. You can't go away and say, well, I need to plan a strategy here on evaluating the situation and looking at it from all sides, and maybe, figuring out the best, most effective way to fight off the lion. You'd be eaten. So
You got to do it in the present. It's very situational, isn't it?
yeah, so all we need to do, and this is so simple, what I realize, that most people, we overcomplicate things far too much, because I'm talking about something natural. All you need to do is figure out, when you know how your brain works, to stop triggering that part of the brain that keeps you stuck, and allow the part of your brain that manages your life to bring all the good stuff to you, and you just enjoy the ride.
So it's basically sort of allowing yourself to let go of the fight or flight response, and just allowing yourself to be more creative and intuitive.
And how do you do that? That's the biggest.
How do you do that? Yeah, how do you let go?
That is the $1 million question. How do you do that? Because we can all say, yes, just let go and not have it. Because that's exactly right. What activates either your creative state or your survival state are your feelings. and they are a sign from your brain about what it thinks about your environment. So if your brain is telling you everything's great in your life, there are no, in other words, there are no, not necessarily everything great in your life, but there are no threats to your physical survival, nothing's about to eat you or kill you, then you don't need to be afraid. So then you can just let me get on with my job and make sure you do the right things, think the right things, come up with the right answers to things and the right ideas to get in the place to where you need to be for you to be your best. But if your brain says there's a danger there, there's a threat to your survival, it's going to shut that part down and lock you into survival state. And that's when we say, I don't know what to do. I'm so confused. What do I need to be? What do I need to do to be happy? What should my goals be? What do I need to learn? What's another book I need to learn? Who can I ask for help? I'm stuck. Well, the reason you're stuck is because you're using a part of your brain that doesn't know any better than those four things I talked about. It can't help you. It can't tell you what your goals are. And people say to me, well, I'm not afraid. I don't feel this fear. But if you have any stress or anxiety or concern or worry at any time, it's simply a sign from your brain telling you that it thinks there's a threat to your survival and it's going to keep you shut down. It's going to keep you in this particular state. So, and what I do to help people is to identify what their subconscious fears are, because it's not necessarily things that you think you're afraid of, but it's through a lot of experience, it's very easy once I start working with people to see in them and help them see what their unconscious fears are. The fears that have been driving them for years, maybe all their life. They were the fears that were driving me, that kept me doing the wrong things to make more problems in my life, kept going after the wrong things that weren't ever going to make me happy, even though I thought they would, and kept all the struggle going. So you need to identify what your subconscious fears are, because it's not your fears, it's what your brain's fears are. It's what your brain's interpretation of your environment is. And the reason you've created all of those is because of a lifetime of the wrong information, the wrong beliefs. And you've taught your brain all the stuff like problems are good. Everybody has problems. It's really difficult to solve problems. You need to overcome obstacles in your life to grow and be better. They're all lies. They're just not true, along with most of the other stuff. Like, you need to figure out what you want in your life. You need to have a plan. You need to have goals. None of those things are true, because if you realize that you've got a brain that's designed biologically with incredible power and intelligence to give you everything you need to be the best that you can be, because that's what you're supposed to be. If you knew that, you wouldn't struggle against it. You'd allow it to do its job. Like the motor car, you don't get out and doubt. You don't get out every 5 seconds to check that the engine's still going or that you're still going in the right direction. And you don't get out and push every now and then just to make sure that, maybe you need to give it a bit of a hand. You just know that's the way it works. So many of these things, that's why we stay stuck. We've trained our brain to believe all of these things that simply aren't true and keep us in this permanent state of feeling that we're not good enough. We don't know the answers. We have to try and figure it out. We have to work really hard and struggle. None of those things make any biological sense. And I was going to mention the other 2 laws of nature. We mentioned the law of
Oh yeah.
thriving. Another law is the law of efficiency of energy. So every living thing is designed to expend the minimum of energy to get the maximum result. The
Oh
conservation
yeah,
of energy,
leverage.
if you like. Well, it makes sense biologically, doesn't it? You think about us millions of years ago, we're hunting in the forest. We didn't find any food for a week. Our bodies had to find a way to preserve us and for a week without food and still give us enough energy to find food even after a week. So all of the time, nature is looking at how can I conserve energy, spend the least amount of energy because I might need it for survival. And the third law, which is related to that, is the law of least resistance, flow.
Mm.
There is no resistance in nature. You look at water running down a river. If it comes to rock, it goes around it. It doesn't stop. Nature always finds the path of least resistance. And we know this from our own life that, you try and ride a bicycle into the wind. It's a lot more difficult and you make a lot less progress than if you just ride with the wind. And being a sailor, of course, I know that from how you use the wind with the sails.
Yeah.
So how does this relate to our life? How does thriving, we're designed to be the best that we can be, but how does the law of conservation of energy and also least resistance or flow relate? Well, it relates to goal setting, because as I said, what would have happened, remember I said if I'd figured out what my goal was, which was to sail around the world and do all these great things. Now, if my brain, say I used my creative brain and I said to my creative brain, this, which is linked to infinite intelligence, by the way, it doesn't just use the little bit of information that you've collected in your life to figure out what you want. It knows everything, if you like. It's our connection to this infinite reality that we live in. So maybe I said to my creative brain, tell me what my ultimate goal should be, what I should be doing to be happy. Now, if it told me that, and if it was something completely outside of my experience from my thinking brain, what would I have said? I'd have said, that's absolutely crazy. What are you talking about? I don't want to go and sail on a yacht. I don't know how to sail a yacht. What do you, that's not what I want. What are you doing? You're questioning, you're doubting, you're analyzing, you're trying to figure it all out. Is that the most efficient use of energy? Is that the path of least resistance? No, it isn't.
No, not
And
really.
that's why your brain doesn't show you what your ultimate goal is. It hardly ever shows you, if ever, what your goal should be. It might, say, well, you want to go and buy a house, so you need to go and look. It might show you might have a goal of buying a house. So that's slightly different. But it doesn't show you your ultimate goal of what you need to be happy, because you're going to doubt it. You're going to question it. You're going to waste all of that energy doing the only thing you're ever going to need to do, and only thing that will get you there, which is to start taking action. So it also, then you might think, okay, well, thanks, brain. Don't show me what my goal is then. I'll trust you. Just show me the next 10 steps on how to get there. Give me a bit of a plan. Because, okay, so your brain says right here are the next 10 steps. What do you do then? You say, hang on, what about step number 3? I'm not sure if I know how to do that. And would it really lead to step number 4? I don't know. I need to go and do some research here. What are you doing again? You're wasting energy. You're analyzing, you're doubting, you're not taking action. So
Mm.
again, this is why your brain doesn't work that way either. All it ever does is it shows you, nature has had millions of years to figure out the most efficient way to do anything. It's ironed out all the problems, all the species and things that processes that didn't work and it took a lot of effort to get the right result, or took more effort than was needed. It's evolved all that out of the natural world. So it shows you the most efficient way possible to get to where you should be to achieve homeostasis. It shows you the very next step. And that's all it shows you, the very next step. And so all you need to do, and this is what really letting go is, really knowing how your brain works, is you just take the next step. I said this to you earlier. I don't know where this conversation's going to go. You say, well, is this all right with you? Of course it's all right. Everything's all right. I don't have any expectation. So when you know that the first step is all you need to do, and then when you do that, the next step will be revealed, it's incredible what happens in your life. It's a completely different way to live your life. And you get all these, like happened to me and still happens to me, and happens to many people who I help get this idea and understand and start to really operate your life in a different way. And I get emails from people and they say, Liam, you're not going to believe what happened. And we both laugh, and I say back to them, well, we both know that it's never about believing what's going to happen, because it's all going to be completely unexpected if you're not expecting anything. But I interviewed a gentleman who's become a friend. He's retired now. He's quite old, but he had a business with 1 million customers in 85 countries. He had 500 staff. He had 2 private jets. He had the largest business of its type in the world at the time, which is going back a little while now. And I remember saying to him, how did you do this? How did you create that enormous success? And he said, I have no idea. He said, it certainly wasn't on my goals list. He said, if I couldn't have put this on a goals list. A goals list would have completely limited my achievement in my life. And
Yeah.
he's and I've spoken to other very successful people as well about this, and they all agree. It's just about taking the next step. You take it, and it shows up. There was another gentleman that was a client of another friend of mine, actually, who just sold an insurance company, or I think it was an insurance company, for $50 million. And he asked him, how did you build up such an amazing company? And he said, I don't really know. It just sort of happened. I just did what I needed. I just did what I did.
Hmm.
I think we find a lot of these successful people, they're not sitting there reading books on self-help and setting goals. They're just doing it. But they have
Yeah,
this
exactly.
inner knowing and trust that I'll just keep doing it, just keep doing the thing, and it'll work out the right way in the end. That's how real success happens. So we need to get away from this idea that we can figure it all out, because that's the wrong part of our brain, particularly when we're stressed. And when are we stressed and worried? It's because we don't know what happens, and we're worried about what might happen, and we think we need to figure it out. Whereas when you release your creative brain and just take the next step, you know that life is a flow, that you're going to do the right things at the right time. Probably won't be what you expect, and sometimes you might even it mightn't be that pleasant. Like losing everything is not exactly the most pleasant experience, but it's really the greatest gift that got me here talking about this sort of
Yeah.
stuff. And really, life takes on a completely different meaning.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. I really appreciate that. Thank you for that insight. Yeah, it does truly sound like you are embodying the essences that you're talking about in terms of shutting off that fight and flight when you need to, and allowing the creative brain to sort of just, like I said, a goals list limits who you are and limits your capabilities really. And I sort of have had that realization just now, because I feel like I'm very much a person that does like setting goals lists, and trying to achieve certain things. But I also do try and like be in the present and trust the process a lot. To like it's just the next step, like you say. Like that's all that matters. It's what you have to do now to develop, to evolve. Really, I really do. Yeah, I really do value that. So just out of curiosity, so from going, let's say, right, there's a hypothetical lion in front of you, about to attack you, and you've used whatever part of your fight or flight brain that is necessary to make sure you don't die. The lion is no longer trying to eat you. How do you then how do you then establish that safety is there? The lion's not going to come back and try and get you again, to then allow you to get back into the creative sort of zone.
Well, again, it's about how your brain works and what your brain believes about your environment, and this all happens far more quickly than our conscious thinking can allow it to happen, because you can remember, if a lion comes at you, you haven't got time to think about it and work it out.
Yeah.
This is far more instantaneous. So what your brain will do, without you having to put any effort in, is when it sees that your environment is safe again, you'll naturally go back into your creative state, into this ideal state. But what we've all done is we've got into this habit of seeing lions everywhere. We've got all these triggers that we've created in our external world, as well as our unconscious beliefs. But we have all these things outside us that make us feel bad. And whenever you feel bad, which isn't just fear, but it's all, a bit stressed, worried, anxious, starting to wonder what you should do, getting frustrated, feeling sad, or getting annoyed, or, being confused. Whenever you do that, what we need to recognize is what that is that's your brain telling you that there's something in your environment or in a thought there's a threat to your survival. And because it's not the feeling that puts you in the it's not like you feel that first and it puts you in that state. When you go into the state, you feel it. So that's the signal that you are in that state, is when you're feeling when you're starting to question, doubt, worry about anything, try to figure it out. Say, what should I do today? What should my goals be for today? Or how do I need to figure out my life? Or I don't have enough money and I'm really frustrated. And, all of those things, that's your brain saying the meaning means there's something in your environment that's making you feel that way. So what you need to do is look at the triggers. And ultimately it comes down to the only game in town that we have, the only enemy we have, which is fear, which is our brain telling us that we live in an unsafe world when it's not unsafe at all. So one of the things to do is to start switching off the triggers. One is stop watching the news. Stop talking to people you don't like talking to. Stop having conversations you don't like having. All of these are simple things. There's a lot more complex ones that I do in my coaching program, help people identify these. And one by one, you just start to eliminate all of these things. And then you start to see your creative brain bring you more and more things that are actually in harmony with who you are and they make you feel good. And so gradually you can get your brain, and often this actually doesn't take long. I've worked with people, and when they get this idea, things turn around really fast. But sometimes it takes a bit longer. But once you start to do that and realize that it's simply your brain's reaction to what's going on, it's nothing to do with reality, and you can stop the triggers, then you start to see more magic happen in your life. And then when you start to see it happen, you start to realize this is the way it works. How did that person come along? Where did I get that idea from? How did this all happen? Wow, that was unexpected. I thought I'd be doing this, but I'm actually doing this. And you realize there's something else at play. It's you, but it's your creative brain. You don't need to be in control. What is control? What is saying I need to figure stuff out and I need things to happen for me to be happy? It's based on fear. It's based on saying, if I'm not in control, if I don't figure it out, if I don't know what's going to happen, something bad's going to happen. So that's
Mm.
all your subconscious fears. The funny thing was, when I realized that fear is the trigger which shuts down your creative, resourceful homeostasis brain and activates this survival brain, when I realized that fear was the activator, I thought, where have I heard this before? I was brought up a Christian, and in the Bible, someone actually counted how many times, but it says in the Bible 365 times, three words: be not afraid.
Oh
Those
well.
three words. Now, it's not a nice idea, try not to be afraid. The Bible is a manual, an instruction book on how to use your brain. It's telling you don't be afraid, because when you do, you activate this weapon, this self-defense weapon, and you shut down your homeostasis seeking creative brain. So it's instruction. Whatever you do, don't feel afraid, unless you have to, obviously. Unless a lion is about to eat you, that's what it's there for. But it's not there for anything else. It's not there for you managing your life when there's nothing about to eat you. So that's why it says in the Bible, be not afraid, 365 times. Have faith, trust, allow. Do not worry about tomorrow. Tomorrow will take care of itself. Do not worry about what you will eat, drink, or wear. It's all going to be provided for you, as it is in the rest of nature. It doesn't say, you know, work out what you want and to what you need to eat, drink, and wear, and work really hard for it. Have a goals list, and you'll earn it. It says it'll be provided for you. And if you look around the rest of nature, that's what's happening. And if you start using your brain the right way, that is what happens. The opportunities come along. And instead of being a struggle, instead of you trying to figure out what you should do, or, we're all in that situation. I used to be all the time, where you're trying to force something to happen. You've got a problem and you just, it's not working. Maybe you've got a person in your business or in your job, something's just not right, or in your relationship, and the communication's not good, and you go to counseling and talk about it for hours and try and figure it all out. You don't need to do any of that when you learn to use this other part of your brain. It's going to make it happen for you, make the right thing happen for you. And the good thing is, this isn't me. This is biology. I'm just talking about something because the good thing was, I went to so many of these gurus who told me, this is what you need to do to be successful. And they looked like they were the proof that it was working, because they were rich. They seemed to be relatively happy. But every time I tried them, it didn't really work for me. And there was a big element of having to believe the person. If they said, do this, because I'm doing it and I'm successful, okay, I'll do it. I'll trust that it might work. But what I'm talking about is just proof, biological proof. I don't want anybody to listen to this and say, oh, that sounds so good, or, I don't want anyone to believe me. I want them to think about it from a logical perspective, and I've got a lot more information, on my website about this. Everything because I wanted to prove for myself that it was true, that what I was doing, the results I was getting, were provable and made total sense, not just based on some idea. It's your subconscious mind, or your thoughts, or I tried all of that, and it was just too, didn't have the proof behind it, which I think we need.
Got you. Thank you. Yeah, I feel like that's a pretty good point to leave on. To be honest, appreciate that. Is there any final words, any final phrase that you'd like to leave it on? I usually I like to sort of leave it on like a quote that helps to sort of sum up the whole message. If you got anything like that.
Well, I guess it comes down to my theme, if you like, which is let yourself off the hook, which means you really have to stop trying to make your life work through force and struggle, because all that does is keep you stuck with the same thoughts, the same patterns, the same results, the same problems. But instead, you have to allow this creative part of your brain to work. You have to get in the flow of your life. You have to get into a different energy altogether, different way of using your physiology and your biology. And then this other part of your brain is actually able to activate itself and do what it's there to do, which is to lead you down the fastest, easiest path to you being and living your biological purpose, being the best that you can be.
Thank you very much, Liam. I appreciate that. Thank you for your time. I'm
Pleasure.
going to leave it there.